Raymond Burr's childhood was a mosaic of movement, hardship, and quiet determination elements that would later shape him into one of the most commanding presences on television and film. Born on May 21, 1917, in New Westminster, British Columbia, Canada, Raymond William Stacey Burr came into the world as the eldest of three children in a modest, working-class family. His early years were not those of fame or ease, but rather of quiet resilience, familial duty, and early brushes with adversity. From a young age, Raymond showed signs of being different not only in physical presence, being tall and broad even as a child, but in temperament. While other boys ran freely in the neighborhood, Raymond often stayed close to home, particularly after his parents' separation when he was only 6 years old. His mother, Minerva, a talented pianist and music teacher, became the heart of the home after his father, William Burr, a hardware salesman, left the family. Minerva's influence was profound. She was artistic, disciplined, and believed deeply in the value of education and culture. Raymond, in turn, absorbed her seriousness and sense of responsibility. He often helped care for his younger siblings and contributed wherever he could. The family moved frequently between Canada and the United States, chasing stability. These moves made Raymond adaptable but also isolated him at times. He was not always the most popular child, and his size made him stand out. While he sometimes felt like an outsider among peers, he found refuge in books and storytelling. He read voraciously adventure novels, Shakespeare, history, and by the time he was a teenager, he had developed a love for performance, often reenacting scenes from plays or films for his siblings. Finances were always tight, and Raymond learned the value of hard work early. During the Great Depression, he took on various jobs: farm laborer, warehouse worker, even a brief stint selling vegetables. Despite the harshness of these years, Raymond rarely complained. Those who knew him described him as gentle, polite, and mature beyond his years. He harbored dreams of acting but kept them quiet, knowing such aspirations seemed almost out of reach. At school, he was intelligent but not particularly outstanding academically. He was more interested in drama and English than in mathematics or science. A turning point came when he took part in a school play and received unexpected praise. For the first time, he felt seen not for his size or his quiet nature, but for something uniquely his own. It was a moment that would linger in his heart for years. After moving to California with his mother in his late teens, Raymond finally found the opportunity to pursue acting more seriously. He enrolled in dramatic classes and began performing with regional theater groups, often while still working odd jobs to support his family. The boy who had once felt overshadowed now stood confidently on stage, commanding attention with his deep voice and expressive eyes. Looking back, Raymond Burr's childhood was not glamorous. It was filled with struggle, responsibility, and quiet dreams whispered in the shadows of hardship. But it was also filled with the kind of emotional depth and strength that would later define his greatest roles as the sharp-wit lawyer Perry Mason or the stoic detective Robert T. Ironside. His childhood gave him empathy, patience, and a rare sensitivity, qualities that allowed him to portray justice, loneliness, and moral complexity with remarkable authenticity. In many ways, Raymond Burr's early life was the foundation for everything that came after. It wasn't filled with privilege or ease, but it was rich in character. The little boy from British Columbia who once read adventure books by candlelight would grow up to become one of the most respected and iconic actors of his generation. And at the root of that success was a childhood marked by quiet strength and an unshakable belief in the power of perseverance. Raymond Burr's career was a journey carved by perseverance, talent, and reinvention. Though he is best remembered for his iconic roles as Perry Mason and Robert T. Ironside, his path to fame was neither swift nor easy. It was a slow climb through the ranks of Hollywood, molded by early typecasting and later, a triumphant redefinition of his place in American entertainment. Burr's entrance into acting came not through glamour, but through grit. After struggling through a difficult childhood marked by financial instability and frequent moves, Burr's first brush with performance came in local theater. He worked odd jobs to support himself while honing his craft in regional plays. Eventually, he attended the Pasadena Playhouse, a well-known acting school in California, and immersed himself in stage work, slowly developing the deep, commanding voice and intense presence that would become his trademarks. In the early 1940s, Burr found work in radio dramas and small stage productions, and after World War II, he transitioned to film. However, Hollywood didn't initially see him as a leading man. With his burly frame, brooding expression, and imposing voice, he was often cast as the villain. He played gangsters, murderers, and corrupt officials, memorable but one-dimensional roles. During the late 1940s and early 1950s, Burr became known for playing heavies in noir films such as Raw Deal, 1948, Sleep, My Love, 1948, and Red Light, 1949. He made a chilling impression in Alfred Hitchcock's Rear Window, 1954, where he portrayed the mysterious Lars Thorwald, suspected of murder. Despite being typecast, Burr approached every role with seriousness and professionalism. Directors came to respect his reliability, and he gradually earned bigger parts. However, Burr yearned to break out of villainous roles and show the emotional complexity he was capable of. His big break came in 1957 when he was cast as Perry Mason, the sharp, morally unwavering defense attorney in the CBS television series based on the novels of Oral Stanley Gardner. Perry Mason was a turning point. Burr beat out several actors for the role, including some considered more traditionally handsome or bankable, but his audition left no doubt. He brought to Mason a mix of intellect, compassion, and steel. The show ran for 9 seasons, from 1957 to 1966, and made Burr a household name. He won 2 Emmy Awards for his portrayal of Mason, and his performance redefined his public image from cinematic villain to heroic television icon. After Perry Mason ended, Burr continued to work in television and film but found his second most enduring role in 1967 with the premiere of Ironside. As Robert T. Ironside, a former police chief who uses a wheelchair after being shot, Burr once again commanded the screen. Ironside was one of the first TV dramas to feature a main character with a physical disability, and Burr approached the role with dignity and gravity. The series ran for 8 seasons, and once again, Burr became a symbol of strength, intellect, and justice. Outside of these iconic roles, Burr was a frequent guest star and narrator, and he lent his voice and presence to various television films and specials. He reprised Perry Mason in a series of 30 made-for-TV movies from 1985 to 1993, continuing his legacy well into the final years of his life. Despite declining health, he insisted on continuing the series, often shooting scenes while in pain, committed to giving audiences the character they had come to love. Burr also had a deep interest in philanthropy and horticulture. He owned a large vineyard in California and operated orchid nurseries in the South Pacific. He funded scholarships, contributed to conservation efforts, and supported causes ranging from education to disaster relief. While he was a private man, those close to him knew him as deeply generous and quietly committed to helping others. In total, Raymond Burr's career spanned over 5 decades, evolving from villainous supporting roles to 2 of television's most beloved and enduring characters. He proved that perseverance could overcome typecasting, that intelligence and empathy could outshine superficial glamour, and that reinvention was always possible with dedication and integrity. By the time he passed away in 1993, Burr had secured his place in entertainment history not merely as an actor, but as a performer who brought justice, heart, and complexity to every role he touched. Raymond Burr, known to millions as the steadfast Perry Mason and the determined Robert T. Ironside, was a man who guarded his private life with great care. While his public persona was one of stern professionalism and commanding intelligence, behind the scenes, his family life was far more complex and often shrouded in mystery. For many years, Burr cultivated a narrative of personal tragedy involving a wife and child, Yet after his passing, biographers and journalists uncovered a more nuanced story, one that revealed both his need for privacy and the chosen family he cherished. Born on May 21, 1917, in New Westminster, British Columbia, Raymond William Stacey Burr was the eldest of 3 children. His parents, William Johnston Burr and Minerva Smith, divorced when he was a young boy, which had a profound effect on him. His mother, Minerva, was a pianist and music teacher who supported the family after the separation. Raymond had a close bond with her and often credited her with instilling in him a love for the arts. After the divorce, Minerva moved her children to California, where she worked tirelessly to provide a stable home. Though his early family life was difficult, Burr's protective nature began to show early on. He often stepped into a paternal role with his younger siblings and helped his mother financially whenever he could, especially once his acting career gained traction. He was known to send money home, even when he himself was barely scraping by during his early acting days. In later years, Burr's personal life became the subject of much speculation. For decades, he told interviewers that he had been married to a Scottish actress named Annette Sutherland, who had tragically died in a plane crash, and that the couple had a son who later succumbed to leukemia. However, no official records of either the marriage or the child's existence were ever found, and biographers believe these stories were fabricated, possibly as a way to deflect attention from his private relationships and to create a socially acceptable narrative in an era when Hollywood was not accepting of homosexuality. The truth, it seems, was that Raymond Burr shared much of his adult life with a man named Robert Bainey-Vides, a former actor and later his partner in business and life. The two met in the early 1960s on the set of Perry Mason, and soon developed a close personal and professional relationship. They shared a home, traveled together, and co-owned an orchid business and a vineyard in Dry Creek Valley, California. While Burr never publicly confirmed their relationship due to the stigma of the time, those who knew them privately referred to Bainey-Vides as Burr's partner. They were inseparable for over 30 years. Though Burr had no biological children, he embraced the role of caregiver and father figure to many. He mentored young actors, funded scholarships for students, and supported numerous charities, often anonymously. Friends noted his nurturing nature and his desire to create a safe and loving environment, something he may have longed for himself during his own fractured childhood. Raymond Burr's idea of family, therefore, extended beyond traditional definitions. It was built on loyalty, shared values, and mutual care rather than blood or legal documents. He remained close to his mother throughout her life, and after her passing, his bond with Bainey-Vides only deepened. Together, they cultivated a home filled with books, animals, and gardens far from the sound stages and the public eye. In the end, Raymond Burr's family was one of his own making, built on trust, protected fiercely from the world, and reflective of the kind of quiet devotion that defined his life. While the public may have seen a solitary man in a courtroom or a wheelchair-bound detective solving crimes, those closest to him knew him as deeply affectionate, committed, and quietly proud of the chosen family he had created. Raymond Burr, the commanding figure behind iconic characters like Perry Mason and Robert T. Ironside, projected an image of strength and stoicism throughout his decades-long career. But behind the polished exterior and courtroom bravado was a man who endured significant and ongoing health challenges, struggles he rarely spoke about publicly and often kept hidden from even his closest colleagues. His health, much like his private life, was carefully managed and fiercely guarded, especially in a Hollywood era that prized physical perfection and feared vulnerability. In his younger years, Burr appeared robust, often portraying heavy-set men with imposing presences. Yet, even in the early stages of his career, his weight fluctuated, and he privately battled issues related to obesity. His size, though commanding on screen, became a source of concern for producers and network executives, particularly as television favored a more athletic, leading man image. Burr resisted pressures to drastically change his appearance but did attempt various diets throughout his life, most of which proved short-lived. He was known to be fond of rich foods and later in life developed a passion for wine, co-owning a vineyard in California. This love of food and wine brought him joy, but it also complicated his underlying health conditions. Throughout the filming of Ironside in the late 1960s and early 1970s, Burr began experiencing chronic pain in his legs and back. Though the show's character used a wheelchair, Burr himself did not, at least not at first. However, he often needed help off camera, leaning on canes or assistants when not filming. His physical condition was deteriorating quietly, and he dealt with degenerative joint disease and the slow but steady onset of kidney problems. Despite this, he refused to complain and rarely acknowledged his pain, pushing through long filming schedules with a stoic professionalism that inspired deep respect among his castmates. In the 1980s, Burr faced even more serious health setbacks. His mobility decreased noticeably, and he sometimes required a wheelchair in real life as well, not just in character. His legs swelled frequently due to circulation issues, and there were persistent rumors of diabetes and other complications, although Burr continued to work and travel as much as possible. Remarkably, during this time, he also served as a United Nations Goodwill Ambassador and undertook multiple trips to developing countries, often while battling fatigue and physical discomfort. One of Burr's most private battles was with cancer. He was diagnosed with liver cancer in the early 1990s but kept it secret from the public and many in his professional circle. He chose not to undergo aggressive treatment, opting instead to continue working and living on his terms. He filmed over 25 Perry Mason TV movies during this final phase of his life, often working through pain and exhaustion with a quiet, unbreakable resolve. Cast and crew members later recalled how he would sit in a director's chair between scenes, pale and clearly suffering, but always ready to deliver his lines with the same sharp authority audiences expected. Raymond Burr's final months were spent largely at his vineyard in Sonoma County, California, with his longtime companion Robert Benavides by his side. The property, which had become a sanctuary for Burr over the years, was filled with orchids, books, and reminders of a life lived fully even in the face of declining health. Though cancer ravaged his body, Burr remained mentally sharp and spiritually grounded. He refused hospital care in his final days, wanting to die in the home he loved, surrounded by the quiet beauty he had spent decades cultivating. On September 12, 1993, Raymond Burr passed away at the age of 76. The public tributes focused on his incredible career and cultural impact, but those closest to him remembered a man of immense strength not because he appeared flawless, but because he endured great physical suffering without bitterness. His health may have failed him in the end, but his will, determination, and dignity never did. Raymond Burr's story is one of endurance. Though he was often in pain and faced a slow decline in his later years, he maintained a level of grace and resilience that mirrored the strength of the characters he played. His health challenges remained largely hidden, not out of shame, but because he believed that his work, not his suffering, should define his legacy. Raymond Burr, known around the world for his commanding presence as Perry Mason and Robert T. Ironside, lived a life that seemed, on the surface, to be filled with success and admiration. But beneath the spotlight, Burr carried a heavy burden of personal and professional struggles, many of which he chose to keep private. His journey through fame was not only one of triumph but also of profound challenge, emotional, physical, and deeply personal. Born in 1917 in New Westminster, British Columbia, Raymond faced hardship early on when his parents divorced during his childhood. The emotional impact of this family rupture lingered with him, instilling a sense of instability and a need to protect those he cared about. Burr took on work from a young age to help support his family. From laboring on farms to working as a ranch hand and selling vegetables door to door, he learned the meaning of hard work not through luxury but through necessity. These early years shaped his stoic nature and deepened his empathy, traits that later defined his most famous roles. As Burr entered the acting world, he quickly encountered another kind of challenge: typecasting. Due to his imposing figure and intense demeanor, he was often relegated to roles as villains or hardened criminals. Though these parts helped him get noticed in films like Rear Window and A Place in the Sun, Burr longed to break away from the one-dimensional characters and prove that he had the range and depth to play more than just the heavy. This struggle to be recognized for his full potential as an actor stayed with him for years, and even when he finally landed the role of Perry Mason, many studios still saw him as a dark figure rather than a leading man. His personal life was marked by secrecy and sorrow. During the 1950s and 1960s, it was extremely difficult for public figures, especially in Hollywood, to live openly if they were gay. Burr, who had a long-term relationship with actor and partner Robert Benavides, went to great lengths to maintain privacy. He created a fictional personal history that included a fabricated wife and child, both reportedly deceased, to explain his solitary life and shield himself from media scrutiny. Though these stories were eventually proven untrue, they reflected the pain of a man forced to hide his identity to protect his career. The burden of living behind a mask for decades was immense, and it took a toll on his emotional health. Physically, Burr also faced many difficulties. He struggled with his weight for much of his life, which led to various health issues including joint problems and limited mobility. While filming Ironside, where he portrayed a police detective in a wheelchair, life eerily began to mirror art. Burr, off-screen, increasingly required assistance walking and often suffered from pain due to circulatory problems and deteriorating health. Yet he continued to work, never allowing his physical limitations to interfere with his professionalism. In the final years of his life, the most painful difficulty arrived: terminal illness. Diagnosed with liver cancer in the early 1990s, Burr kept his diagnosis a secret from most. He didn't want sympathy, nor did he want his legacy tarnished by pity. Even while battling cancer, he continued to film Perry Mason television movies, working long hours despite fatigue and discomfort. He rejected hospital care and chose to remain at his California home, surrounded by nature and his beloved partner, rather than face the cold sterility of medical facilities. Despite the profound challenges of living inauthentically, struggling with illness, and dealing with the weight of fame, Burr never allowed these hardships to define him. He became a philanthropist, supporting children's charities, wildlife organizations, and the arts. He found solace in his garden, in orchids, and in the quiet companionship of those he trusted. Through it all, he remained generous, kind, and unshakably private, a man who bore life's pain with quiet dignity. In remembering Raymond Burr, we remember not only the strong, articulate characters he brought to life, but the quieter strength of the man behind him, a man who carried immense difficulty with grace, and whose legacy remains as much about perseverance as it does about performance.